Welcome to Control Alt Society podcast, and welcome to our deep dive today, where we are tackling a platform that has gone through a really profound and, to be honest, a very strange transformation. I'm talking about LinkedIn.
hmm For years, LinkedIn was, it was the gold standard of professional seriousness.
Mm.
It was designed for, as we like to say, labor, not love. It was where you put your resume, you polished your professional brand.
And you definitely avoided putting anything remotely personal.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was almost deliberately boring, career-focused.
Yeah.
But the collection of sources we've pulled together for this, I mean, the anecdotes, the research, it all tells a story about where LinkedIn is today. It's just gotten bizarre.
It really has. The lines between your personal life and your professional identity have blurred so completely.
Mm.
This job platform is now, well, it's teeming with curious exes, scorned lovers, and even, alarmingly, stalkers.
And that creates this really fascinating and, I think, unavoidable tension for anyone using the site professionally.
It does. You're basically trapped between two things you need to do. On the one hand, you have to maximize your professional exposure. That's just mandatory for career opportunities today.
Yeah.
But on the other, you're trying to maintain some tiny bit of personal privacy.
All right.
So we're all forced to pay this kind of hidden price for visibility. We're calling it the privacy tax.
The privacy tax. I love that term. It really frames the whole mission of this deep dive because we need to explain what that tax is, why it's so heavy on this specific platform, and, why snooping on an ex on LinkedIn is just fundamentally different from doing it anywhere else.
Exactly. I mean, snooping on social media is, let's be honest, universal. The temptation to check up on someone after a breakup is just documented human behavior. But on platforms like, say, Facebook or Instagram, they generally don't rat you out.
Unless you accidentally, double tap a photo from 2012.
Right, the dreaded double tap.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn is the big exception here. At the free unpaid level, the platform doesn't just passively allow this kind of digital snooping. It actively shines a spotlight on it.
And it's doing that for a very specific financial reason, which we are definitely going to get into. Okay, so let's unpack this with the first layer of that privacy tax, which is just sheer, unadulterated embarrassment. The awkward side effects of the site's weird visibility settings.
Oh, our sources give us plenty of material here. Take Branda Statman, a brand manager who told a story about having what she called scary times. And by scary, she means pure mortification, when she'd forget to switch to private browsing mode while scoping out exes, or maybe even more risky, potential partners she met on dating apps.
And when you forget, you get the notification. Your target knows you were there.
Yes. But Branda's situation, it got way more complicated. She was put in a really tough spot when her mom got involved.
Oh, no.
Her mom decided to look at the profile of one of Branda's potential suitors. And when the guy, inevitably brought it up,
Of course he did.
Branda had to scramble. She had to lie and say she'd been browsing on her mom's phone and that it was a total accident.
That's a masterclass in digital deflection. She said something like it was, quote, totally just my mom looking and stalking.
And what's so interesting is how that shows your professional presence isn't just for peers. It's a data point for your whole family network and everyone they're invested in.
And the power of that professional validation is real.
Yeah, the story continued. So that same guy, he ghosted Branda.
Okay.
But years later, he texted her out of the blue to apologize. He said he was glad to see she was doing so well professionally because he'd seen her success on LinkedIn.
So her professional visibility becomes this weird, delayed form of validation. It really does go both ways.
And the reasons people lurk are they're all over the place. We found stories about a woman in the 2010s using it to fact-check Tinder dates who all claimed to work at Vice.
That's amazing.
To the purely accidental, like the woman who, after her divorce, mistakenly sent a LinkedIn connection request to her ex-mother-in-law.
Oof. Talk about a notification you do not want to see.
Or the man who caught his cheating ex looking at his profile on his birthday. A little reminder from LinkedIn that he was being watched, even on a personal day.
These are, kind of lighthearted or awkward stories, but they set up the lure of lurking. We do need to move past the surface level embarrassment, though, and look at the actual consequences.
The research is really clear on this.
So what are the stakes?
Well, research shows pretty consistently that keeping tabs on a former partner after a breakup, it just heightens distress, it increases jealousy, and it really hinders your emotional recovery.
And when LinkedIn is the tool you're using for that, the stakes get higher because you have to be so exposed.
Exactly. For some users, it's not just about distress, it's about genuine safety. Take Holly Benjamin. She had a history with an ex that involved a restraining order years ago. And she felt the urge to look him up, just to see where he landed. But she was really worried that if she did, and he saw her name pop up in his viewer list, it could send her into a year-long spiral. For her, a seemingly neutral action, just looking at a job profile, it becomes an incredibly high-risk thing to do.
The platform itself, with its visibility rules, makes curiosity dangerous.
And what really stands out to me is that the embarrassment Holly was afraid of, it's not some accident of the design. It's the core feature of LinkedIn's whole freemium business model.
Okay, let's stop there and really define this freemium spy game, because this is where that privacy tax really gets collected. What makes LinkedIn so unique in, ratting you out?
It's this ingenious financial trade-off they've built right in. So at the free level, LinkedIn gives you a little teaser. You can see some info about who looked at your profile, usually just the last 5 viewers, or maybe vague details like someone in recruiting in New York.
Right, just a little taste.
But there's a massive condition. You can only see that partial list if you agree to let others see when you've looked at theirs.
So my access to data about who's looking at me is totally based on me sacrificing my own anonymity. That's the engine that creates all the embarrassment we were just talking about.
Precisely. And that whole mechanism is a revenue driver.
Yeah.
If you want to get rid of that risk, if you want to browse totally incognito,
You have to pay up.
you have to pay for the higher-tiered premium version. They're literally monetizing the tension between our curiosity and our shame.
They force you to choose between free professional visibility and paid privacy. It creates what one source called a web of spies and spy catchers, where your anonymity is directly linked to your monthly subscription fee.
Which gives us that perfect burn line from one of the stories.
It does. Dakota Ray Lowe, she had a messy split that, of course, spilled onto LinkedIn, and she still catches her ex shamelessly viewing her profile months later.
And she just summed it up perfectly by questioning, can he not afford premium?
That is the ultimate public shame. She pays for it specifically to avoid that mortification.
So having premium becomes a status symbol, or not having it signals you have no shame.
Exactly. And this constant viewing, it often escalates. Kevin Grunewald, a recruiter, he thought his breakup was amicable. But then the woman he dated started viewing his profile almost daily.
He guessed it was, like, part of her morning ritual. But that visibility, it started as just curiosity, and then it crossed a line. It escalated to her liking his posts, messaging him.
And then it got worse.
Yeah, eventually she started popping by his house a few times. He had to explicitly put his foot down and demand that she stop. The site just gave her this persistent, low-effort way to stay in contact that amplified everything.
That level of visibility is terrifying. But what's really interesting is this pattern we noticed across a bunch of sources. It's not always the exes doing the viewing.
No, not at all. A lot of the time, it's the parents.
The parents, of course.
They're often, less digitally savvy and definitely less digitally bashful. They're just searching without realizing the platform is going to announce who they are. They're not aware of the privacy tax.
So they're doing the deep dive on behalf of their kids.
Totally. Gina Gakad noticed her college boyfriend's mother was lurking on her profile long after the breakup. And this happened right around the time she heard her ex was seeing someone new. Her guess was that the ex's mom was trying to size up the new girlfriend by comparing her professional profile to Gina's. The family deep dive is a very real and very public thing.
So we've gone from, mild embarrassment to pretty invasive surveillance. Let's pivot now to the motivations behind the lurking, how it moves from just curiosity to, say, professional self-validation or, in some really critical cases, genuine threats.
Well, we should start by saying that for most users, being viewed on LinkedIn is a good thing, right? People are proud of their accomplishments, a new role, a promotion, and they're happy for their network to see them. It's a source of validation.
Yeah, and sometimes that validation isn't coming from a mentor, but from a former partner who doubted you. Gina Gakad, the one with the ex-mother-in-law problem, she admitted she did some lurking of her own. After an ex belittled her job prospects, she specifically went to his LinkedIn to see if he'd been caught in his company's recent layoffs.
And he had been. She said she felt this mix of pity and satisfaction. Her words were unfortunate, but also he was being a dick.
Right. She used the platform as a place to, quote, validate myself. It's a clean, professional way to feel like you won the breakup, at least on the career front.
But the whole feeling around this visibility, it just changes completely when lurking turns genuinely threatening. And the reason LinkedIn becomes a vehicle for that threat is structural. Unlike other platforms, it basically mandates that you share specific high-stakes information, like your current location and workplace, just to be effective.
That's the core of the problem right there, the lack of control.
Exactly. Rosanna Bellini, who researches how tech impacts stalking, she points out that platforms like Instagram or Twitter give you these fine-grained elements of control. You can set your profile to private, you can close your DMs.
But LinkedIn offers none of that for your core profile info.
None. To be marketable to recruiters, you have to be visible. You have to list your location, you have to list your company. This mandatory exposure creates this vulnerability that you just can't opt out of.
And that can have some really harrowing consequences. We heard a very serious story from a woman, we'll call her RT. She's a corporate recruiter whose ex harassed her badly after their split in 2020.
And the harassment was serious. It included waiting outside her home, confronting her father at his job.
And threatening to call her employer to get her fired.
Right. So think about the power LinkedIn gives a person like that.
Right.
RT is now married, she's living abroad, she's blocked him everywhere else. But her concern is still there because she noticed his retired father was looking at her LinkedIn profile.
Wow. So the harassment doesn't have to be direct. Just being seen by the extended network of her harasser is enough to create fear.
And self-censorship. It weaponizes her professional life. She said it makes her wary of posting, which for a recruiter is a direct hit to her career. That's the privacy tax directly impacting her job.
And it's not an isolated thing. We saw a similar dynamic with Amanda Brooks. She had to block a persistent Hinge date on all her social media. But a year later, he found her again and followed her on LinkedIn, started liking her posts until she had to block him there, too. She just called it crazy stuff.
LinkedIn really is the final frontier of surveillance when all the other doors have been shut.
So if we connect this all back to the broader job market, this threat of surveillance creates a massive professional conflict, doesn't it? Especially with this modern creator economy vibe.
Oh, absolutely. There is this huge institutional push for all of us to become, hashtag LinkedIn influencers and creators, to be constantly shouting about every minuscule work win.
Right.
If you're not out there optimizing your profile, engaging publicly, the perception is that you're failing.
So we're all under this pressure to perform this hypervisibility, but that performance directly increases the risk for all the reasons we've just laid out.
It creates a huge professional dilemma. As Rosanna Bellini noted, it's now seen as a bit of a faux pas to leave necessary information off your LinkedIn. If you take off your location or your job details, recruiters will just bypass you. So missing info, even if you removed it for your own safety, can directly affect your employability.
So what does that mean for someone who's actively job hunting but has a legitimate safety concern? We heard from someone, we'll call her DA. She's job searching right now, and she's wondering if limiting her profile info to avoid an ex's surveillance is going to hurt her chances. She said, "I'm afraid of being stalked and this guy having too much information."
Her dilemma really just summarizes the core conflict that was identified by the researcher Brooke Aaron Duffy. Society and the professional world socialize us to believe that putting yourself out there is a route to potential success. But that very same action opens you up to risks of hypervisibility. You have to expose yourself to succeed, but that exposure can be dangerous. The burden of security is just shifted entirely onto you.
So what does this all mean for you as a user? We're in this world where it's just so natural to be curious about where people ended up. But LinkedIn is the only major platform where that simple curiosity can feel actively risky.
It alerts the target, and it compromises their own professional visibility. It's a strange dynamic.
Before we end on that tense note, we should probably mention the one extremely rare positive counterpoint we found.
Yeah, just to show it's not all doom and gloom. We heard the story of Lisette Hall. She was added on LinkedIn by a man from high school she hadn't spoken to in 20 years.
Her friends told her to just ignore it, that it was awkward.
But she accepted. They started chatting professionally, then personally, and now they're married. He saw LinkedIn as the least creepy avenue to reach out.
That's the exception that proves the rule, I think.
It probably is. But for those of you who might be struggling with the emotional side of all this visibility, relationship therapist Jamie Bronstein had some really vital advice. She says that if you're in a relationship and find yourself constantly checking on old flames on LinkedIn, that's a huge red flag. It's time to start asking yourself questions about, are you happy?
And for anyone on the receiving end of those constant views after a tough breakup, she had a pretty sobering reminder about ghosting. If the other person cut contact, you have to remember that no message is a message.
That's key. Their continued viewing is probably more about their inability to move on than it is about you. It helps reframe that feeling of being watched.
So that brings us to the final thought for you to chew on. What is the ultimate personal, emotional cost of achieving maximum career visibility?
Since we know that keeping tabs on exes hurts our recovery, and LinkedIn's whole structure basically forces professional exposure.
What line do you draw when the working world demands so much from you? Where does your professional brand become involuntarily personal, and how do you mitigate that privacy tax? Something to think about the next time you decide to poke around. Incognito mode, hopefully.